Hello everyone! It has been the most stressful week, month, and year of our lives, hasn't it? Sometimes when I'm stressed beyond belief, all I really need is to kind of dive into a movie and pretend I'm not me for a little bit. And while I love a good plot, I love action, I love fantasy, I love all these things, sometimes what I just need is to watch people doing life. People who aren't me, just doing life. So today I'm here to talk to you about some of my favorite movies from the slice of life genre, which is basically just that. It's very character heavy and has less of an emphasis on plot, and you kind of just get to watch the daily lives of people. To start, I'm gonna take this opportunity to talk about my favorite movie of all time, which is Stranger Than Paradise, directed by Jim Jarmusch. This film is about a man named Willie who kind of just bums around Brooklyn with his friend Eddie, and then he gets a visit from his Hungarian cousin named Eva, who is my favorite film character ever, maybe?
Hi everyone, it's Nicole from the future. I'm just here to say that her name is literally pronounced Ava, not Eva, even though it's spelled EVA, and that I'm stupid and should never be allowed to speak again. Alright, bye.
And the film just kind of follows them as they bum around Brooklyn. Eventually, Eva leaves to go live with her aunt, and Eddie and Willie go to follow her. They bum around there, they bum around Florida, and it's just this movie of incredibly long takes where you watch these three people do stuff together. It's very important to me, actually, that this movie is shot in long takes. The camera is stagnant, and you just watch the characters have sometimes like a 10-minute long scene, and then it cuts to black and goes on to the next 10-minute long scene of the camera not moving and characters kind of like coming in and out. I think this film would secretly be boring if the characters weren't all very interesting on their own. Like, they're not doing a lot, they're not people who have these wild ambitions, but Eva is this calm, go-with-the-flow woman who like loves Screamin' Jay Hawkins, and Eddie is kind of a jerk, but lovingly so. Willie, actually, sorry, Eddie is the friend, and Eddie is just kind of like sort of a bumbling, lovable idiot. But more than anything, what I think this film does well, and what I think Jim Jarmusch does really well overall, is I think this film kind of sneakily has a lot to say about like being a bohemian and living that poor lifestyle and what it's like to be a woman in those circles, because Eva's often excluded from the things that the two of them go out to do. So you get a lot of this film that's just like Eva being in a country that she's never been in before, like trying to figure out life, and it's so beautiful. I know it sounds like there's nothing that goes on, and it's kind of because there's nothing that goes on, but if you kind of just let yourself get wrapped up in this universe of these three characters, it's just the most beautiful and calming thing of all time. Another Jarmusch film that I think is basically like the quintessential slice of life film is Paterson, the 2016 movie starring Adam Driver as a bus driver named Paterson in Paterson, New Jersey. This film takes place over the course of a week, as we see Paterson wake up every day and go to his job as a bus driver. He's also a poet. At night, he takes his dog for a walk and goes to the bar and then goes to bed. He lives with his partner Laura, who doesn't seem to have a job but has all these like artistic endeavors. She wants to be a country musician, and she's always painting around the house, and she wants to be a baker. And so, again, I think Jarmusch does this really well. You have this movie that is just about like the daily tasks, the monotony of what Paterson does every day, but I also think it's saying so much about like art and artistic endeavors, because Paterson is this poet, like that's the thing that he does, but he doesn't share it with anyone. Like, one of the tensions of the film, if there's even tension at all, is that Laura, his partner, wants Paterson to publish some of his poems, and he doesn't want to do that. So you have this like quiet, kept to himself man, and meanwhile you have this like sort of, not bombastic in personality, but like Laura is very out there in her aesthetic and like the way she changes her artistic desires, even over the course of a week. Like, you discover that she wants to be a country musician on like, I don't know, Wednesday or something, even though like earlier that week she said she wanted to open up a bakery. So you have this like flighty woman and this very concentrated man, and I love it. I love it so much. This film, even more than Stranger Than Paradise, I think is really focused on the day-to-day monotony of life and like habit and all those things. But again, I don't think it's boring. I think if you allow yourself to be in Paterson's world and experience the ups and downs of like a Monday with him, it's both a very calming and beautiful thing and also a very interesting thing, and I love this movie. Up next, we have a movie that I first saw this January and I've already seen 3 times this year, which is not something that happens to me. I don't rewatch movies like this a lot, and that is Frances Ha, directed by Noah Baumbach. Frances Ha is about 27-year-old Greta Gerwig, who lives in New York City with her friend. That's the basic premise. Frances kind of wants to be a dancer, but doesn't also really know what to do with her life because she's not a great dancer, and so she, again, is kind of this like young woman who's just trying to figure it out. You follow her through a few apartments because at the beginning she's living with her best friend Sophie, and then Sophie moves out to be with her boyfriend, and so Frances is living with other people, and you just kind of see her flow in and out of friendships, in and out of roommates, and you watch this woman who just doesn't know what to do. I think this movie resonates very personally with me for a few reasons. One, I think this is the single best movie about female friendship I have ever seen. I think Frances's relationship with Sophie is something that movies don't know how to tackle because Hollywood is so rampant with men, and I think the fact that Greta Gerwig co-wrote the screenplay with Noah really shines through this because the relationship between Frances and Sophie just feels so genuine. You get to see that like soulmate relationship that often happens in friendships that I feel like is not touched on enough in films. But also, Frances is so annoying at times. She is annoying in all the same ways I'm annoying. She doesn't know how to tell short stories. She kind of takes up too much space sometimes without realizing. She talks, and yet like at her core I feel like she's this complete dreamer that she just wants to know what to do with her life, and I feel like there's almost a way in which she wants someone to like tell her what to do, but she's so headstrong that she wants to find it for herself, and it just, I'm talking about myself now, if you'll note, but I just see so much of myself in this character, and I think that's part of why I love it so much. Up next, I'm going to talk about 3 films, actually, that I've already talked about on this channel, and that is the Before Trilogy, directed by Richard Linklater. This film is about a young man and woman named Jesse and Celine, who meet on a train in Europe, and Jesse basically convinces Celine to get off the train with him in Vienna, and you get to watch these 2 characters meet each other and spend a night together for an hour and a half. And then Before Sunset happens 9 years after that, and Before Midnight happens 9 years after Before Sunset. And you just, all 3 of these movies are very dialogue heavy, very focused on just this central relationship between these 2 characters, and you just get to watch them get to know each other and also grow as you watch successive movies. I think the previous movies I've talked about are very focused on kind of the actions of life. Meanwhile, these movies are really, really screenplay dialogue heavy. Like, the thing I get from this is less like what Vienna is like or what these people do on like a random Tuesday, and more just like who they are at the core of people, because this is what they're gonna talk about. And sometimes, especially when we're in a world right now where you really can't meet new people because you're not supposed to be out there in the world, it's nice to just get to watch 2 people talking to each other. It's almost like, you know, when you listen to a podcast and you almost feel like you're a part of the conversation just because like you've been at home for a week and haven't talked to someone, and so you need to like just hear 2 people talk to each other genuinely. That's what these movies feel like to me. It feels like genuine, rich conversation between 2 people, and as a viewer you get to be a part of that. Up next, we have a movie that I do not see talked about enough, and that is George Washington, directed by David Gordon Green. This film follows a group of black kids and teens in rural North Carolina, and this one, I think more so than most of the films I've talked about, is a little more plot heavy. Towards like the beginning, middle of the film, they go through a tragedy together, and you have to watch this group of friends just kind of try to live through that tragedy together. But even though there is this kind of like central plot event that happens, I think what this film is mostly about is, again, just like the dynamic between these friends, the inner circle dynamics, and also the dynamic between them and the adults in the town, which I think this film does that really well, understanding that like friendship that can sometimes occur between just a kid and an adult. I feel like Roger Ebert said this better than I'm ever going to be able to, so I'm just going to read to you a quote that he said about it. "It's not about plot, but about memory and regret. It remembers a summer that was not a happy summer, but there will never again be a summer so intensely felt, so alive, so valuable." And I think that kind of captures what I love both about this movie and this genre, that it's less about what happens and more about what it feels like to be a human being. And I think George Washington is a movie that understands what it's like to be a human being, and although I can't obviously speak to this experience, presumably what it is like to be a poor black kid in a poor neighborhood. And then my final recommendation for you is The Florida Project, directed by Sean Baker. This is about a 6-year-old girl who lives with her mother in a motel in Florida, and they are just struggling to get by. That is kind of the plot of this film, but again, the central thing I think you follow is, again, a summer with a young girl. I think there's something interesting to be said about summer and slice of life movies, because it's kind of this plotless era of a kid's life. You know, like the plot happens when you're in school, but summer growing up has always just been this time of anything can happen. And so you watch this mother try to provide for her child, but you also spend a lot of the movie just following the girl as she has friends in the motel and friends in the area as they are just trying to find joy in all these small places. I think a misconception about slice of life movies is that they sometimes have nothing to say or that they're boring, but if you watch The Florida Project and truly believed it had nothing to say, you'd be so missing the point, because the motel they're staying at is juxtaposed with the fact that they're so close to Disney, and this film just has so many complex things to say about womanhood and about poverty and childhood wrapped in with all these things, and it's beautiful, it's heartbreaking, but again, I think it falls into that you can get wrapped up in just like the lives of these people. There are a couple movies I quickly want to note that I think are slice of life movies but don't exactly fall into the this is calming and will take you away from your problem zone, and that is Gumbo and Do the Right Thing, for completely different reasons. Gumbo is perhaps the most disorienting film I've ever seen. It is unrelenting in its grossness and harshness and imagery, and while I like it and enjoy it very much, it's not necessarily something I would recommend to someone hoping to wind down and relax at the end of a day. And Do the Right Thing, which I genuinely believe is a perfect film, and it does have that slice of life vibe. It's just following kind of the daily lives of this Black community in New York City and this Italian pizzeria. It is doing so much to confront race relations and police brutality, and while it's a movie I would recommend to everyone, I don't necessarily think it, again, falls into this category of I'm just telling you to sit there and forget about your life and maybe not think about your problems for a little bit, because that film is confronting too much to plop it into the category of turn your brain off for a bit. So those are my recommendations. There are a lot of key slice of life movies that I haven't actually seen yet, so a movie that I'm watching in actually 2 weeks is Yi Yi, directed by Edward Yang, which everyone has told me I will love, and I know that is kind of like a staple of the genre. I know Fellini has done a lot of slice of life stuff, so this isn't all of them. These are just the ones that I have seen, so they're the ones I can recommend. I am sweating bullets right now because my string lights are up around me, so if I have looked sweaty and gross and terrible this entire video, please forgive me. It's weirdly hot in North Carolina today, and I'm not sure what that's about. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I gave you some new movies you can watch, and if you watch any of them, please let me know what you thought. If you've seen any of them and want to gush about them, I will gush about them with you in the comments. I genuinely love all these movies and love talking about movies, so I have a YouTube channel, duh. But that is all I've got for you today, and I will see you guys next time.